guys. Welcome on into the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. Thank you for joining us. Charlie Turner here along with Chris DiCarlo, John Restino. Gentlemen, as we take our last show of the month of February, as we head into March, we're still freezing our balls off here in Western New York. I have a big block of ice in my backyard. That's a lot of fun. So I hope you guys are at least staying warm. You guys aren't taking any spills on the ice out there. John, I know we talked about it a little bit off the air. Hey, man, we're not getting any younger, man. So, like, the traction gets worse and worse.
I think I broke my hip. I think I broke my hip or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. Freaking decrepit. My
Terrible.
God.
I hate wintertime.
I can't stand it. I'm done with it, man. I'm over it. But, you know, we got somebody today that can relate. He's out in the great state of Minnesota where, you know, it's not much warmer there. And they got about like 150 inches of snow, I think, last night. Something like that, give or take. But, Chris, I want you to give this gentleman his proper intro. We'll bring him on in. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. Yes, it is our honor and privilege to have. And today our guest is just that. Great producer, director of the AWA back in 85 to 90. He is also co-host now with the AWA Unleashed podcast with Chris Tubbs and Mr. Mick Karch. He is the one and only Mr. Joe Ciupik. Welcome to Falls Count Anywhere, sir.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. And for the record, it wasn't 150 inches, but it certainly felt like it when we got 16 a couple of days ago. So you guys are getting all of our leftovers now.
Yeah, give or take a few inches, right?
Yeah, yes.
At this point of the winter, though, it's like it's this all mishmash of ice and snow, and yeah, we can relate, man, because it's not only can we relate weather-wise, but and we won't go into sports, but football-wise, I feel like our teams are almost related. The Vikings and Bills both being 0-4 in Super Bowl, so we share that as well. Of course, we have.
I am waiting for the Bills and the Vikes to face off in the Super Bowl. Then at least we're guaranteed one of them will get off of the schneid.
Somehow it'll end in a tie.
I would love that.
Something.
Yeah, you know, our franchises do have that kind of luck. You're probably not wrong there, John.
Well, of course, Joe, we wanted to bring you on board because we're talking some wrestling, obviously, and we are very interested in your story because, you know, we know, as Chris mentioned, you've now joined Chris Tubbs and Mick Karch with the AWA Unleashed podcast. We thoroughly enjoy that, man. We watched. I know Chris watches every week. I haven't had a chance to watch every week, but I have watched here and there. I saw the interview with John Nord, bits and pieces of that. Just how's that been going with the podcast with those two gentlemen there? Are they treating you right? If not, you know,
they're treating me great. I've known Mick, you know, for 36 years. Worked, you know, with him doing indie wrestling here in Minnesota. Just met Chris, but it's worked out well. I enjoy it. It's as I tell everybody, it's easy for me because I lived it either as a fan growing up in the 1970s or as the producer, director, editor, audio guy, you name it, from 85 to the unfortunate end in November of 1991.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe, better known as Polish Joe, you know, you worked with the AWA, and you know, I got to ask, man, this question, it's kind of a, you know, it's a layup question, but it always makes me curious because I feel like the wrestling business is a tough nut to crack. It's tough to get in, and then once you're in, it's like it's probably got to be a whole new world. So as far as your start into wrestling, I take it you were probably a wrestling fan, is what caught your interest, I assume anyway, but what was that like, the initial foot in the door? What made you want to get into it, and what was that initial experience?
Yes, I grew up a fan. As I tell the story, the first main event I ever saw was Crusher and Mad Dog Vachon at the old St. Paul Auditorium in a steel cage. And how could you not get hooked off of that? And Crusher ended up being my all-time favorite, being him being a Pole from South Milwaukee and me being a Pole here in the Twin Cities. As far as how I got into it, I didn't try to break into it. It was sheer happenstance and good luck. I went after high school. I went to college for a year, discovered that college just wasn't for me. I wanted to get into the workforce. I knew what I wanted to do. At that point, I wanted to be a play-by-play commentator for either football or baseball. I'm an overall sports fan. Well, I ended up going to, we'll call it a technical school here in the Twin Cities called the Brown Institute, which is no longer around. Well, the course was 3 months of radio, 3 TV, and 3 radio. When the TV course came around in the middle, there was a new student. The classes were small. It was only 12, so you certainly noticed if there's somebody new. Well, the name sounded familiar, and her name was Kathy Gagne. And so I'm like, being a wrestling fan still at that time, I had to introduce myself and ask her. And, she humbly said, yes, I'm Vern Gagne's daughter. And we struck up a friendship through the 3 months that she was there. When that was over, went back to the last 3 months of radio. And then the day that we graduated, a classmate of mine by the name of Will Bryan, or as Larry Nelson nicknamed him, Whippoorwill, he called me up and said that Kathy Gagne had called him about coming in to do some camera work and that they were looking for a second person. I said, I would absolutely love to. I mean, I had a couple of cocktails in me, of course, by that point already. So it was extra celebratory, and went in that following Monday. And Will and I ran cameras for interviews with gorgeous Jimmy Garvin, Mr. Electricity Steve Regal, and their manageress Precious. They had the night before, with the help of the fabulous Freebirds, those dastardly flying birds, had defeated the Road Warriors for the AWA Tag Team Championships. So that experience was cool. When we got done, the producer at the time, Mike Shields, who had come over from Nashville, from Jarrett's territory, Mid-South, had asked if we would be interested in doing an internship, a paid internship with the AWA. Just, they want to test out, see if, okay, these guys are going to work out or not. Well, 38 years later, here I am talking to you guys about doing professional wrestling. And the other thing you said, Charlie, about once you get in, I've long joked that professional wrestling won't leave me alone. And I say that not that I don't want it to, to find me, but those 6 initial years with the AWA has laid an incredible groundwork for, I guess, the character of, which is just me, of Polish Joe. And that's thanks to Larry Nelson. And so, yeah, there you have it. I didn't seek it. It found me in the beginning, and it continues to find me 38 years later.
Did you think it would last that long when you first got into it? Did you think maybe it was something, okay, yeah, of course you wanted to get into that and maybe make that your career. Did you imagine it would turn into 38 years?
No, I never thought it. I remember Mike Shields telling me at one point that as long as there's a Gagne alive, that the AWA would be around. Obviously, we know that that didn't happen, although we did revive the AWA library through a series of pay-per-views using the library, and that actually started in January of 2020. But no, I never thought that I would be doing professional wrestling 38 years after the day that I started it. I mean, let's face it, when you're in your 20s, how much do you really think about the future? You just sort of fly by the seat of your pants and, just do the work and get paid and hope you don't piss somebody off.
Right.
Yeah, right.
I can't imagine. I mean, I did a little bit of radio like 20 years ago for maybe a year or two. And one of the things you learn quickly is there's a lot of egos involved in the radio industry. And that's just, comes to territory, whatever. So I can't imagine that, or I can imagine that there's had to be some of that in wrestling as well, right? Was there any, I don't want to say hazing, but was there any period of you getting kind of broken into the business as you first started there? Was there any talent that maybe just kind of messed with you or anything, or was it just kind of like a smooth transition behind the scenes getting into the business, or was there some kind of breaking in, so to speak?
I'm chuckling at your question because the reality of professional wrestling is that the talent, the wrestlers that participate in it, are really just grown-up children, and so that's why I fit in so well. And so yes, I mean, the pranking did happen, although it wasn't horrible, because they knew that, well, hey, this guy is in control of the TV show, and they didn't want to rub me the wrong way and be able to maintain their airtime. But no, my initiation to going to the Showboat in Las Vegas, we're there for a total of 21 hours. And I was 21 years old at the time, the first trip to Vegas. Actually, I was still 20 on the first trip, but you didn't sleep. Although I did on that first trip for about an hour, but here I am 20 years old and experiencing Las Vegas, although I was 21 to drink. Fortunately, I passed. So had a few beverages and partied a little bit with the talent, and about 5 o'clock thought I could get a quick nap in before my airplane. Well, that was a mistake, because at about 6:30 I hear Larry Nelson pounding at my door. Joe, we got to get to the airport. Wake up, are you in there? And I'm in a fog. Yeah, got everything gathered, and we got there. Now keep in mind, this is at a time when you could show up a half hour before your flight and make the airplane, without any problem. Well, we made it there and get on the airplane. I'm thinking, got a couple hours. I'm going to take a little nap. Well, I woke up with Sherry Martel standing right in front of me, and she has her lipstick, like literally right in my face. And I fortunately woke up. And I was going, Sherry, what the hell are you doing? Oh, nothing. And, everybody starts laughing. And so I asked her, what did you get on me? Oh, nothing. Yeah, like, I'm going to believe you. So I proceeded to try to get up from my seat. And, they had tied both of my shoes to the seat of the airplane. And got them untied and got into the bathroom, and sure enough, Sherry was just going to begin to put the makeup on me, so I was able to escape from there. But that was the first rib that they did to me on the road.
Wow.
I love that.
Mr. Ciupik, John's wife Robin has a question for you first.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I know. I have a question about Rick Martel. I know he was an AWA champion, and I'm curious what you think of what they did with him when he transitioned over to WWF.
As far as what the AWA did with him, well, the only transition was that they got rid of the belt, gave it to Hansen in the Meadowlands. I think it was December 29th of 85.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was about it. Like all of the, I hate to call them defections, because the boys or the talent, they were independent contractors at the time. But, it hurts to lose a talent like Rick Martel, but Vern and Greg were used to it by that point. Quite a few defections or moves to the WWF, and they just patched it up. gave the belt to Stan, which, I mean, certainly he deserved it. I mean, Stan's a legend in the business and carried it well until that whole debacle happened at the end. But no, I mean, losing Rick Martel certainly hurt. But I think when he went to the WWF at the time, he developed into a character rather than this clean-cut Canadian who had the belt and really didn't have a gimmick with the AWA. He was just a good-looking baby face, but Vince took him to another level. So sad to see him go. Everybody was, but yeah, shit happens, as the bumper sticker says.
Yeah, Mr. Ciupik, question for me, since talking about, of course, I've been a fan since 1980. Like you, and I went to college also because I wanted to become a broadcaster in wrestling because it's just my hobby and my love, but that didn't pan out. But luckily, I got this opportunity to have this podcast for the past year, and I'm just loving it as a fan and getting a hold of people like you to come on. But my question, too, is from the Showboat. How come we never seen a steel cage match on TV on ESPN from the Showboat?
Good question. And the thing with the AWA, in particular, Vern, is that Vern was old school. A case could be made for that was part of the eventual demise of the AWA. But the reason that there was no cage match at the Showboat was Vern didn't want to give away the biggest payoff of an angle. He wanted people to see the setup, see the angle be developed, get the heat going in the match, and then for people to plunk down their money to go and see it live in an arena. And so that was his logic. That was his mentality, for better or for worse. And so, yeah, so that's why we just never did a cage match at the Showboat. At least they may have done it before I got there, but it wasn't televised. It would have been a dark match that, just a house show or house match.
Right. I've seen a cage match from the St. Paul Civic Center, of course, but never on TV, either at the Tropicana, in the studio, or at the Showboat, of course. So, yeah, that was my question.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, let's have a cage match, me and you, buddy. We'll next week's show. We'll do a cage match from my living room or something. I don't know. I got a dog treat here anyway. One thing I wanted to ask you about, and it seems like this day and age, it's a little bit of a polarizing topic. Not polarizing to the sense of bad or good, but I guess Hulk Hogan is somebody I wanted to bring up to you. I'll notice in comment sections on wrestling, Facebook pages, whatever the case, a lot of newer wrestling fans, people born in the 90s or later, they'll look at Hulk Hogan and they'll say, well, he wasn't that great of a wrestler, and I don't know what the big deal was, but for guys like us that lived through the Hulk Hogan, the Hulkamania, and he was everything to wrestling. I just want to ask you about, first of all, his time in AWA. Did you have any type of communication with Hulkster, and during that time, did you see the potential in him to when he turned to a babyface, he kind of got all American, and that's when he really exploded? They had the WWE Rivals on the other day with him and Andre. They kind of talked about the AWA stuff. Did you kind of see it coming with him, or was he kind of just another one in the herd, and he just kind of Vince McMahon plucked him out of the AWA and made a big star out of him? Did you see it coming, and what do you think his impact was to wrestling overall? I guess is my main question.
So Hogan came into the AWA. The earliest footage that I had seen was from August of 1980. He couldn't talk a lick, just this big, muscular guy, and he was managed by luscious Johnny Valiant, which, that's what they did back then. If you couldn't talk, but they wanted to give you a push, they gave you a mouthpiece. And so I didn't start with the AWA till 1985, and Hogan had left in May of 84. However, I was in high school and followed the AWA continued to follow the AWA faithfully. So I watched his rise in the AWA, and there's no mistaking. And I always credit two personalities, although one is a tag team, for changing professional wrestling. And the tag team was Animal and Hawk, the Road Warriors, Legion of Doom, and the other one was Hulk Hogan. And the reason that I say that is there were muscular guys before them. You know, Superstar Billy Graham is a prime example. In fact, Jesse, credits Superstar Billy Graham with Jesse's portrayal of his character. But Hogan, you could see it. He was so much bigger than every other wrestler in the AWA and had the charisma in the ring. When he would come out and he had the shiny gold long robe, if you will, and he would come out and spread out his arms. I mean, it was just like, holy shit, this guy is huge. Nobody can beat him. And so as a fan, I took to him right away. I was, Super Sunday when he won the strap from Nick, but then Stanley Blackburn, it was disappointing. And then the whole leaving the AWA, it was devastating as a fan here, just absolutely devastating. But as far as what you had mentioned earlier about fans talking about how he's not that big of a deal or wasn't that good of a wrestler, 2 points. One, I think it's, generational for one thing. The younger fans now didn't see what led up to Hulk Hogan and then see the rise and the outburst of Hulk Hogan onto the wrestling scene. Right. Much like, you can go back, people, the younger fans nowadays probably think that Aaron Judge is better than Mickey Mantle. Right. And, you can't, you can, but I think it's unfair to try and compare different eras and different stars of any particular sport, hell, even movie stars. It's a different time. It's a different era. For Hulk Hogan, when he came out, he changed the entire landscape of professional wrestling with Vince McMahon's help. Yeah. But I will agree, and I've said it before, and it's no disrespect to Hulk Hogan. He wasn't the ring technician. He wasn't the Nick Bockwinkel, a Harley Race. Right. But he had the charisma and made the most of it. He's arguably the most recognizable name in professional wrestling, and he deserves that. He deserves that credit. I'll finish the last thing. My last thought about Hulk Hogan is I'm trying to decide whether his leg drop or Crusher's bolo are the worst finishing moves that I've ever seen. And I say that because I love the Crusher. He was my favorite growing up, but just two brutal finishing moves to watch. But hey, they both deserve their spot. They're both true legends in professional wrestling.
Yeah, and another name we can throw out there as a happy birthday to segue into the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Oh, that's right, 74 today.
Yeah. Watching his documentary, I worked with Rick one time. It was at Twin Wars 90, the last live event of the AWA in the Twin Cities. And hey, he's a pro when it gets into the ring. He's he's a small child outside of that. That's still at this age. He's a grown-up kid. I think it's what endears him to me and a lot of other fans in a way. But I mean, Rick has had his demons, as he's admitted to. but how can you argue his success in the ring? I remember watching his first retirement match against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, and I had goosebumps because I thought those two pulled it off. It was a phenomenal tribute, a great way to end, well, at the time, end Ric Flair's career, and sort of a passing of the torch to Shawn. They performed in the ring, and inside the ring, much like the Road Warriors and Ric Flair, despite what you think of him as a personality outside, inside that ring, Ric Flair is a true wrestling legend and arguably one of the best doing a promo.
Yeah, I think that's where your differences are with when you look at Flair and you look at Hogan. They were the two biggest names of the 80s and going into the 90s. And with Flair, yes, he had the charisma, he had the big gold, he had the robes, but it was more about the wrestling. And with Hogan, it was his presence, it was his cultural impact. Once WrestleMania took off, or once that hit, Hulkamania just took off at that point. And I guess that's why I wanted to touch on the Hulkster a little bit, is because a lot of newer fans, guys that are just growing up into like AEW and all the stuff going on now, and they look at Hulk Hogan and say, "Look, isn't that good a wrestler? What's the big deal?" But for us, we realize, there's the cartoons, the action figures, all the way down to the Hulkamania workout set, right? So it was, which I had, by the way, and it didn't work. But it was just amazing, his impact on the business. And, Joe, I want to – go ahead.
I can interject one thing, Charlie. So the whole – and I agree with you. Flair and Hogan at the time in the mid-'80s were arguably the two biggest stars. As far as like doing the promos, if you think about it, Rick – I have to give credit to another person that helped Hulk Hogan, and that was Mean Gene Okerlund, because Gene and Hogan just gelled and worked out so well. I don't know that Hogan could do a 3 or 4 minute promo on his own. Just the way that his interview style was, he needed, I thought or think that he needed somebody to feed him, to interact with him. And he did it remarkably well. Where Ric Flair, Shivani would just sort of set him up, and then Rick would carry it right down to the countdown of the promo. So that's where they were different there. They were both phenomenal on the mics, but in different ways.
Absolutely. And another, you mentioned the Road Warriors, and I was talking to John and Chris before you joined us here. I was like, man, we don't talk about the Road Warriors enough. Your thoughts on them as a tag team? Do you consider them the greatest ever? I do, just based on, they're, again, kind of similar to Hogan, their presence, their size, the face paint. They kind of set the tone for tag team wrestling. They were so big and dominant back in AWA and then into WCW, NWA, WWE. What's your thoughts on the Road Warriors?
Well, as I had mentioned before, they along with Hogan, changed the way professional wrestling was presented to the fans. You had these big muscular guys, and much like Hogan, they weren't good in the ring. They weren't ring technicians. A lot of the talent were not happy that they wouldn't sell, but that was not their gimmick. Their gimmick was that they were essentially untouchable and they could beat the shit out of anybody. So from that regard, yeah, I'll lump them in with Hogan from a in-ring performance thing, but there's no arguing their impact on the fans coming out. When they were with the AWA, and you would hear that first, I don't know what the instrument is, but the beginning of Iron Man, when they would come out, that arena would just explode because they knew what was coming. These two big mohawked, well, in manner of speaking, mohawk face-painted behemoths with their black leather jackets or vests with the spike. I mean, it was it was a site that changed professional wrestling. They deserve their credit for their role, but I'm never going to put them in my top 10 of greatest ring technicians in tag team wrestling. But it's professional wrestling, so you have to take the whole package. And if I take the whole package from the impact that they made in the ring and on the mic, I would definitely put them in my top 10 all-time tag teams for their overall contribution to the sport.
Yeah, Mr. Ciupik, talking about the Crusher real quick. I have footage of him and Tommy Rich as the Georgia tag team champions in '79. And even the Crusher in Georgia was great. And he was in the AWA. Of course, I was a fan. And growing up from 1980 on watching pro wrestling, Nick Bockwinkel, Harley Race, Ric Flair, the High Flyers. I mean, the list goes on of all the greats too. So definitely.
Yeah, an incredible time. One of the things that saddens me about that time is, unlike today, where you carry a camera, calculator, phone, flashlight, computer in your pocket and are able to take selfies and pictures with anything and everything, including some, whatever you ate for dinner that night. In the 80s, you didn't think about photos. At least I didn't. Again, I started when I was 20 years old. And back then, you either had the little Kodak 24 instant disposable camera that you carried around, or you had a really nice camera. But you didn't carry it around all the time. And all of the stars that I had worked with, I don't have photos with them. I just have this up here, fortunately for now. See how long that lasts. And, Wahoo McDaniel, Ray the Crippler Stevens, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, Adrian Adonis, all of these guys, that I worked with, Kurt Hennig, one of my all-time favorites. It saddens me that I don't have the pictures for no other reason than just for my own being able to look back at. Of course, if I had them, they'd be on my social media. But yeah, that's just what sort of saddens me about the time. If I could go back and do it all over again, I'd go and buy a bunch of those disposable 24-roll cameras.
Or even the old school Polaroids too, man. Remember those? Those were instant photo. That was like, we were blown away back then. Like, wow, it printed a picture right away.
Yeah, could have had one of those. But again, big bulky thing this size, you're not going to carry that in your pocket, or you traveled lighter back in the day.
Yeah, Mr. Ciupik, just a quick plug, as you can relate to John, our friend and producer here, has a sports show, Spitball and Podcast, that you can see every Friday night at 6 p.m. here. And he covers all the sports like you enjoy too, mister.
Oh, thank you.
Well, I see the Toronto Maple Leafs hat there, John. And so we were talking before about the Bills and the Vikings. I think the Maple Leafs could fit into that group as well, of disappointing fans all too often by the end of the year.
Absolutely. Yeah. This year, I'm sure they'll play Tampa again, and I'll know what'll happen already. It's almost like wrestling, almost like pro wrestling with the Leafs.
Right, it's already figured out. It's in the script. We're going out.
We gotta get new bookers in.
Yes, please.
Joe, if you don't mind sticking with us, we do have to do like a quick break with our sponsors here. It would be like 2 minutes.
Of course.
We just want to do like a quick commercial here, and then if you don't mind sticking around with us here, and we'll come right back with you.
Be happy to.
All right.
Digits 988 can save a life. If you or someone you know is having thoughts of suicide or experiencing a mental health or substance use crisis, 988 provides connection to free confidential support. There is hope. The Lifeline works. For 24/7 confidential support, just call, text, or chat 988.
All right, welcome back to the Falls Count Anywhere podcast. This is Charlie Turner with Chris DiCarlo and John Rustino. We are here today with Mr. Polish Joe Ciupik of the AWA Unleashed podcast and formerly of the AWA.
One quick question. The wreaths by law. I saw a lot of sports, but I didn't see a wrestling wreath. I think we got to get working on that.
Yes, she can do it. She is
I'm sure.
Absolutely. Get a hold of her, man. She can do it, right? You guys, now, real fast, I'm glad you brought her up. Elena, our friend, she just, it wasn't long ago, she had kidney transplant surgery. And she's doing really good, and she makes beautiful wreaths. So, yes, wrestling people, fans out there, please, she'll do it. Get a hold of her on our Facebook.
Yeah, AWA, Georgia. Yeah,
good idea. Very good idea.
WrestleMania wreath. There you go. An AWA Unleashed wreath. How about that?
Yes, definitely.
I love it.
Mr. Ciupik, sorry to butt in, Charlie. Mr. Ciupik, a question or any story, if you have it, about we love the Iron Sheik and his tweets each week. So any Iron Sheik or Andre the Giant stories?
No, they were both gone again by the time that I had gotten there. I missed out on the opportunity. Cosro did come to the AWA, did a couple of matches in the later 80s. But they were house shows, didn't have a lot of interaction with them. I do agree with you. I love his tweets, Bubba. He's hilarious. I just wish he would be more concise about his feelings for Hulk Hogan.
It's so funny because
he needs to just finally just come right out and tell us what he thinks about Hulk.
Well, it's funny you say that because we do a segment on this show every week where we do Sheik tweets, and he doesn't go more than 7 days within a week of talking about Hulk Hogan. As for example, here he put a little poem together calling him Hollywood blonde jabroni at the end there. We just find it absolutely hilarious that since it's like he's been pissed off since 1984 when he lost the belt to the Hulkster, and he will not stop until he's off this earth someday, which we hope is 100 years from now. But we absolutely love the Sheik. That's why we wanted to mention that, because those tweets, as you mentioned, endless entertainment. Whoever's running that tweet page, if he's saying it and somebody's just typing it into words and posting it for him, they're doing a great job of capturing the Sheik with some of his brash and raw takes on the world today. It's hilarious.
Well, of course, Cosro, or the Iron Sheik, was trained by Vern Gagne.
Yes.
In the early 70s. And he went on and had a pretty damn good career for himself. As far as Andre goes, he, it's not a regret because I never missed the opportunity to work with him other than just timing. But there's one story that Ray Stevens told me about Andre. They were in San Francisco. Of course, Ray, I don't know if he still does, but he held the record for most consecutive sellouts at the Cow Palace. Well, this one night, Andre, as Ray told the story to me, Andre, after the matches, may have had 3 or 4 cases of beer and some cognac and whatever else. Got back to the hotel. He got into the hotel lobby, and as Ray said, he didn't pass out, but he decided that he needed a nap. And so in the lobby, on whatever furniture was in the lobby, Andre decides to take a nap. Well, the people that are working there, what are they going to do? You can't move Andre. It's like, well, they did best that they could. They went and got a tablecloth, 'cause that's the only blanket that was big enough for him, and they just covered Andre with a tablecloth and waited for him to wake up. I think, if they'd have been smart, they'd have sold tickets to come and see the sleeping giant in our lobby while supplies last. But, but yeah,
giant, right? Yeah.
Yeah, but can you imagine walking into a hotel lobby and seeing Andre the Giant sleeping in the lobby of your hotel?
Yeah.
Again, if they'd have had cameras, I'm sure there would have been a lot of photos of it, but they didn't have that Kodak or the Insta camera.
Well, his farting was legendary too, from what we've heard from some of the stories. If he let one rip, the whole arena knew about it basically because it was so loud and long and disgusting.
A lot of gas in that big fella. Yeah. And he loved to do it. He wasn't shy, apparently, of letting one rip when he needed to. Better, he to me was like the forefront or forerunner of Shrek. Better out than in.
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Ciupik, here's one you can tell us about for sure. I know as you directed, you brought up the name, of course, another legend, Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Comes to mind is when he and Colonel De Beers went at it, and De Beers pushed him off the top rope and landed on a cement floor there at the Showboat. And Roger Trongard and Lord Blears calling that was great.
Yeah, it was Rod Trongard. Roger Kent was the announcer from the earlier years. Just wanted to give proper kudos.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
The thing I remember about that night in that match, Vern didn't smarten me up until the 2000s when the AWA library got revived. So as his editor, as his director, he still tried to maintain kayfabe, even with his camera guy, with his director. So I would always have to get the information from somebody besides Vern. And in the instance of the Snuka and De Beers match, Vern had told the producer at the time, Mike Shields, of the finish. And so Mike had myself and Will Bryan, who I had mentioned earlier, we were doing handheld, and we were told what post and what corner that the angle was going to happen. Even though we had 4 cameras for the taping, which is our standard for anything at the Showboat or any TV taping, they wanted to have a 5th camera as well because they didn't want to smarten up one of the handheld camera operators. So they told us, and we got the shot, got everything done. Everything was great until, I shouldn't even say until, but then after the matches, I'd always grab the 1-inch reels, bring them back to my hotel room, and then go find what hotel room was going to be having the parties. And so I walk into, I forgot whose room it was, but I walked in and I felt like I was watching the scene from Fast Times at Ridgemont High when they open up the van. And Spicoli and his buddies came rolling out. There might have been a little smoking of some ganja going on in the hotel room, and lo and behold, I walk in and there was plenty of it going on, and leading the way was none other than Jimmy Superfly Snuka. And Jimmy had, shall we say, it wasn't a little pinner; it was a pretty good sized joint in his hand. He sees me come in, and he just go, and I can't do a Jimmy Superfly Snuka impersonation, but hey brother, come here, sit down right next to me. And so as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking, okay, well, I guess I'm going to get high with Jimmy Superfly Snuka. Well, he proceeds to take several tokes off of this very large joint, and the whole time he's talking to me about the angle. Did we get it? How did it go? Is everything right? And I told him what I told you guys, that, Vern didn't smarten us up about it, but that the producer, Mike Shields, did. He goes, okay, brother, that's good. We got it all, 'cause I can't do that again. I'm not, I'm not getting any younger and stuff. he passed me the joint. I think I took one hit off of it, gave it back to him, and I think he did another 12 and just continued to talk. And brother, just stick with me. Just you let me know. I'll tell you what the finishes are going to be. Vern's not going to, if he's not going to tell you, I'll tell you. We just got to make sure we get it. It's all about the money. Okay, great. I'm sitting there next to Jimmy Superfly Snook, and he's going to smarten me up to the business. So that's my Snuka story. Jimmy was great to work with, very humble. Like any of us, he had his demons as well. Stories on the internet going around and so forth. I never, fortunately, witnessed any bad stuff. I can only say good stuff about Jimmy because that's the experience that I had. Nice, professional, quiet, solemn, and he loved to smoke his ganja.
Wow.
And Joe, what I wanted to ask you about, currently with the AWA Unleashed podcast you guys have been doing, when it started out, it was Mr. George Shire there, and then it was just the two, Chris and Mick, and then you joined along, and now you've been involved with them for a good period of time now, and have been able to do, like I said, I mentioned the John Nord interview and other interviews as well. As you've been able to do the podcast from the perspective that you're giving us, now that you're looking back at things and now you're getting a chance to have these guys back on and ask them questions, how has that experience been with you as far as being able to kind of go back and have these guys on and talk about those days? For example, John Nord, that had to be pretty awesome.
It was great reconnecting with Johnny. Right before the pandemic, Mick Karch had done an AWA reunion. And I ran into to John there, and I understand it. A lot of the talent, when I go back up and I haven't seen him for 30 plus years, they'll look at me. It's like, God, you look familiar. And then I said, remember that skinny little kid that was behind the camera? And they look at me and go, Polish fucking Joe. Sorry if I
no.
And then all of the talks and all of the memories, John Nord at that one, and then Mick had another reunion just this past November of 22, and Derek Dukes and Pat Tanaka were there. Same type of situation. I was directing an indie show for a Midwest All-Star Wrestling, MAW. Their big show every year is a fundraiser for Native American women in the shelter, and they brought in Diamond Dallas Page. Well, Page started after I did in the business. He was not a young kid when he started, and I saw him walk up, and I did the same thing to him. I said, "Hey, Pager, remember a camera guy behind, or skinny guy behind the camera?" He's looking at me and go, "Do you remember a kid named Polish Joe?" He looks at me, he goes, "God damn." And so it's great to reconnect with them, especially a time period that amazingly, that it was only 6 years on my initial run with the AWA, 85 to 91. Case could be made that was only 5 years, because that last year was really just reruns. But that time, and then working with Vern and Greg when we resurrected the library before we sold in March of 2003 to the WWE by that time, just the flood of memories and the stories. I mean, those 5, I'll still call them 6 years. Those 6 years, I've got 30 years of memories from, because
Awesome, yeah.
of just the way that the industry was back then. A bunch of grown men in tights being teenagers, both inside and outside the ring. I mean, my goodness, the shit that they just did. They were just having fun, and because they were, I was. So I enjoyed it. And so doing the AWA Unleashed, it's easy because I lived it. I either as a fan or working behind the scenes. It's just easy. It's just telling stories and talking about a subject and a time that I truly loved and appreciated.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that because, you know, when we started this podcast, you know, we're just three wrestling fans. I mean, you talk about technology today, everybody's got a phone in their pocket, everybody's got a Zoom or a computer. So we decided, hey, let's do a podcast wrestling. Chris has a lot of old school wrestling clips that we usually feature on the show that we wanted to put some use to. And the reason I wanted to mention AWA Unleashed is because, you know, Mick and Chris Tubbs and at the time George Shire have been so friendly to us. And Joe, we appreciate you just taking the time just to hang out with us and share some wrestling stories, man. Like, as wrestling fans that just started this thing last year, some of the guests that we've had and some of the stories that we've heard, including yours, have been so awesome for us, man. So we can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day and joining us and sharing some of the history that you've experienced in the AWA. And hey, man, anytime you want to come back, and we got so many more questions we could ask you. Anytime you want to come back and join us, we'd love to have you back and pick your brain about the wrestling business from back in the day.
Anytime. I'd love to come back on here. The only difference between this and what usually happens is if I'm out at a bar or a restaurant with my buddies and they introduce me to somebody new, it always ends up they introduce me as, oh, and you know, Joe used to produce the AWA. Well, 2 or 5 free beers later and then a couple of hours worth of stories to the person because they're asking me all of these questions. I love it. I love telling the stories. I love reliving a time that if I had a time machine, I would go back in and do that all over again with cameras this time.
Absolutely. Us as well. We appreciate it. And like I said, when we check out the AWA podcast, the Unleashed podcast, it, as fans as us and other fans, I'm sure, you know, there's a following on Facebook. There's an AWA Unleashed fan page that's been growing. And it's just a chance for us as wrestling fans and wrestling fans tuning into your show to just kind of relive those days, those territory days that were so unique compared to what the wrestling business is now. It's so kind of cookie cutter now, where back then there was more of a grind and the talent really had to. I mean, not that they don't now, but it was just more of a grind, it seemed like back then. So again, Joe, we thank you, man. And as far as checking the show out, you guys are on YouTube. I know that. And it's under Chris Tubbs' AWA Unleashed channel. So if anybody hasn't subscribed, please do so. It's awesome if you haven't checked it out. But you guys are also on Spotify and Apple iTunes, correct?
Correct.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Joe. We, again, man, anytime you want to come back and hang out, we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, let me know. We can book it again, and might have to do a few hours because if you haven't been able to tell, I like to and can talk about the AWA for hours.
We appreciate it.
So do I.
It's invaluable to us, sir. Absolutely. And stay warm out there in Minnesota.
Yeah, likewise. You guys are getting our sloppy seconds right now, so stay warm and stay safe.
Yes.
Absolutely. You too, sir. All right. Thank you again to Mr. Joe Ciupik, Polish Joe from the AWA, and now with the AWA Unleashed podcast. Very good stuff, guys. You know, just being able to ask us questions about some of the talent that he had a chance to interact with is pretty cool from us, you know, a fan's perspective to hear those stories. So
so many other questions. I was going to get to Sherry Martel, Medusa. I mean, there's so much talent, so many questions to ask them. So I'm sure we'll have them back.
Oh, absolutely. And in the weeks ahead, guys, I won't be here with you guys next week. It'll be Chris and John taking over things for the way I got to work next week. I know on Saturdays, but hey, it happens now and then. But I will be back on the 11th. If anybody gives a shit. But anyway, Chris and John will be holding it down with the guests next week that we have planned. So, guys, we want to run through the Sheik tweets, the rest of them, might as well before we sign off, right? Because it's always great to hear from the Sheik. He had a beautiful poem he wrote about the Hulkster.
Yes.
And yeah, that is beautiful. Look at that. Roses are red, violets are blue. Hulk Hogan is a dumb son of a bitch. And a Hollywood blonde jabroni, too. Thank you, Sheik, for that. There's about 2 or 3 more there, John. I'm going to roll through them real quick. Talking about Sami Zayn here. Sami Zayn. Sammy's super over, Bubba, and he hashtagged the WWE Chamber, Elimination Chamber. There's no doubt. I mean, this was in Montreal, of course, but even last night, SmackDown was not in Montreal. It was in the States here. I can't remember where, but Sami Zayn is super over right now. And there's been some talk that, you know, is WWE doing the right thing with Cody Rhodes? Is this the right timing? Because Sami Zayn, it just seems like just a natural transition right now for him to go into WrestleMania and win the title because of all the momentum he has right now. It'll be interesting to see if they ultimately split the belts heading into WrestleMania. I don't know how they would do that at this point. I thought maybe Elimination Chamber would have been an opportunity to do that. Maybe put one of the titles up in the chamber. I don't know. But it seems as if Cody Rhodes going in, he's going to have to – they kind of got it started with Heyman and Cody Rhodes in the ring. They were talking about Dusty. They were talking about their history, and they're trying to make it personal and getting the fans involved. But I don't know. Sami Zayn's momentum, as the Sheik mentioned in his tweet, is just kind of – it's undeniable right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot for Triple H to be in because I agree totally. But of course, you know, we've seen the setup from Cody Rhodes coming into WWE, what was going to happen eventually down the road. Of course, get the heavyweight championship. So, you know.
And hopefully bring back that Winged Eagle belt that has been rumored by Cody Rhodes. Now, Cody Rhodes, if you remember when he won the Intercontinental title, they went to that oval Intercontinental title. He scrapped that once he won it, went back to the old HBK, Ultimate Warrior, Rick Rude, Macho Man, Ricky Steamboat. I can name all those guys. That old, you know the one I'm talking about, the nice-looking Intercontinental title belt. But yeah, it's just really cool stuff. So yeah, we'll see what happens with Sami Zayn, and we'll see if the Winged Eagle belt comes back if Cody Rhodes does in fact win it. But I think splitting the belts would be the thing to do. They were talking about that, but I don't think that's going to happen at this point. But it's going to be interesting to see as we're on the road to WrestleMania here to see what happens. I think we had two more Sheik tweets there.
This one I want to say I agree with so much because I was watching a UFC event the other day, a pay-per-view, and my God, it didn't stop.
Oh, yes. The Cocaine Bear movie. And the Iron Sheik, I break the Cocaine Bear fucking neck. Yeah, I mean, look, it's weird. A Cocaine Bear, what the hell? I don't know. It's probably not a movie I would go see.
It's a true story, too.
Is it really?
Yeah. There was a bear that ate a bunch of cocaine that got dropped from a plane somewhere. But then they've made it into a circus, you know, however they're doing it.
Oh, well, you know, the fact that it was a true story actually kind of piques my interest a little bit because now I am kind of curious. But I would love to see the Sheik in that movie to put him in a
or the guy who made it. The commercials was relentless. So here, I'll bring up your last one.
It can't be worse than the Burger King commercials, by the way.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I want to ram my head through the TV. Around. But anyway, this last one here I wanted to bring up here because I don't know who Mighty Maccabee is. I remember I break the Mighty Maccabee back, but now he do the good for the people. I love him and the people forever. But here you see the Sheik with the Mighty Maccabee in the camel clutch. I really wasn't sure who that was. I just kind of scoured the internet, that link and everything, and I saw a little bit of that match. It was some sort of charity thing they were doing. And, of course, the Sheik took the opportunity to show some love and also show him putting him into the camel clutch there, which, of course, only the Sheik can do. So, yeah, good stuff, man. Just wanted to run through those Sheik tweets. Nice. We hadn't been able to get to them the last few weeks. We wanted to catch up with the Iron Sheik for this week. But, guys, another great show in the book. I know we got some a little public service announcement we want to throw out.
Before we go there, John, we'd like for you to tell the people out there that we appreciate so much about Facebook stars.
Yes. In our if you right now as you're watching, you would have seen the Facebook stars promo pop up in the comment section. Or you can go to fb.com/stars. That helps us. For 99 cents, you give us, I forget how many, like I think 100 stars or something. Well, anyways, the stars help us as far as our growing the podcast on Facebook. It also helps us by giving us a couple bucks here and there, which helps us get more guests, helps us with production of the show and the programs we need. So yeah, when you see the Facebook stars, 99 cents helps us out a ton.
You know what's funny about that? And just a quick rant here, but it's Facebook's thing with the stars, right? It's on their, when you set it up, you can click the star. So when John, you put it in the comment section, hey, you want to help out the show? The stars features there, and then Facebook flags it as spam. Like, well, it's your feature. What are you talking about? Get Zuckerberg out here, man. Let's talk to that jabroni because I don't know what's going on with Facebook.
Yeah, it's their thing. Yeah, we don't make it up.
Yeah.
We got flagged for spam. Come on. Not only that, and then some other jabroni left you could put a review on our page. And if you'd like to give us a review, we'd love to hear back from you. We always appreciate the feedback. but there's some spam review that's been sitting there. I've reported it like 1,000 times, and it's still sitting there. It's one of those, you can make $8,000 working from home, this and that, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, ignore that crap. But again, our Facebook page, if you could check us out on there, if you click the like button, you'll see all of our updates as we go. And if you want to leave any feedback on the reviews or in the comment section on this show, as always, we appreciate it. And we do read those as we did. We responded to each and every one that we can as we see them. So again, we appreciate that. But
also we would like to thank our fans and people out there that watch us on Twitter, which John brought up at Count Anywhere. We are on Twitter, and that's growing. Also, our home, our Facebook show and channel and page here, and also on our Spotify, and yes, our YouTube at Friends with the Z Media Network is also growing. I understand past 32 viewers. We need to get 1,000, but we're working on it, and we appreciate each and every one of you. John, go ahead.
Today's little public service is human trafficking, 888-373-7888. It's a hotline. It's confidential completely. You're not on the hook for anything. If you see something, say something. Just remember, it's not just stuff that happens like, if you're at the southern border type thing. It's everywhere. It's throughout the entire country. You're probably in your community, sadly. So if you see anything that looks odd to you and you're thinking, wow, that just doesn't seem right, when you see it, give this number a call, and you don't have to worry about it. The police aren't going to show up at your door or nothing. They just take your tip and work it and move on. So that's the human trafficking hotline, 888-373-7888.
Yep. If you see something, say something, right, guys?
Yep.
Well, gentlemen, again, as we sign off here, I know you'll be holding it down as we head into the Ides of March next week on March 4th, I believe that is. As you guys will be holding it down, I'll be back in 2 weeks. But again, thank you to each and every one of you for checking us out. And hopefully we get a nice thaw here in the next coming weeks, and my backyard goes from a frozen pond back to grass. That would be nice. Yeah. So, and I'm sure everybody in Western New York would agree. But guys, have a great weekend. Again, thank you to Polish Joe Ciupik for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.
Okay, yes, thank you.